From the toothpaste you use in the morning to the laundry detergent you run at night, these giant corporations are in a constant battle for a spot in your home. But 2025, well, that wasn't just another year. It was a total pressure cooker, a high-stakes stress test for the biggest names in the business. And in this explainer, we're going to use exclusive analysis from HDIN Research to sift through all the evidence and figure out who didn't just survive, but actually came out on top.
So, here's the big question we're tackling. When the global economy gets tough, who really gets going? Which of these household giants managed to navigate that absolute storm of inflation, new tariffs, and brutal competition to emerge as the winner? We're going to follow the evidence and find out.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the hostile environment of 2025, what we're calling the squeeze. Then, we'll see how the titans, both the old guard and the newcomers, held up under that pressure. We'll connect it all back to your shopping cart, decode some crucial financial clues, and finally, reveal the expert verdict from HDIN Research. Let's get into it.
Okay, so to really understand who won, you first have to understand the battlefield. And trust me, in 2025, that battlefield was an absolute minefield of economic challenges.
Every single major player faced what HDIN Research calls a triple squeeze. First up, you had inflation that just wouldn't quit. You and I were watching every penny, a lot of us switching to cheaper store brands, and that put a real cap on sales. Second, boom, new U.S. tariffs hit in February, hammering key supply chains and driving up costs for literally everyone. And third, a wave of new regulations from the FDA, plus new climate reporting standards, just made it harder and slower to get new products out the door. It was a perfect storm. So how did these companies actually handle all that pressure? What's really fascinating here is that we have a perfect test case. Two brand new independent players, Haleon and Kenvue, who were basically thrown into the deep end and forced to navigate this storm all on their own for the very first time.
So in one corner, you've got Haleon, and in the other, Kenvue. Both were just spun off from their massive parent companies, which means they suddenly had to stand on their own 2 feet. Kenvue, for instance, became the world's largest pure-play consumer health company overnight. So you have these two new titans facing the exact same insane pressures. How'd they do?
Well, the results could not be more different. Just look at the data. Haleon actually managed to post positive organic growth of 3%. Kenvue, on the other hand, saw its organic sales shrink by 2.2%. That is a 5-point swing between them. This is a huge clue for us. But to really get why it's so important, we need to quickly talk about what organic growth actually means.
Think of it like this. Organic growth is basically the purest health check for a company. It cuts out all the noise from things like buying other companies or currency swings and just tells you one simple thing. Is the core business, the stuff they already do, growing on its own? For Haleon in 2025, the answer was a clear yes. For Kenvue, it was a no.
Okay, so I know all this talk about organic growth and corporate strategy can feel a little abstract, but this is where the story gets personal. Because these boardroom decisions didn't just stay in the boardroom. They followed you right into the supermarket aisle and had a very, very real impact on your wallet.
And you know what? This wasn't some kind of surprise. The companies themselves saw it coming. This is a direct quote from a 2025 financial filing from Colgate-Palmolive. They told their investors, point blank, that they expected customers to switch to cheaper, private label brands. They knew our shopping habits were about to change.
And what was the result for us? Come on, we all lived it. It was that moment of hesitation in the aisle, doing the mental math. It meant hunting for deals, maybe trying out the store brand for the first time. And of course, it meant the rise of shrinkflation. You know that feeling when your favorite box of crackers gets just a little bit smaller, but the price tag magically stays the same? The pressure these corporations felt was passed directly onto us.
Right, to really find our winner, we've got to look past all the marketing and do what the pros do. Follow the money. We need to dig into the financial filings, because that's where the real story is told. And believe me, you can't hide from the numbers.
Let's start with a really, really big number, $1.3 billion. That is the size of the impairment charge P&G took on its Gillette brand. Now, an impairment charge is basically a company's way of admitting that an asset, in this case the Gillette brand, isn't worth what they've been claiming on the books. It's a massive admission, and in the world of finance, that's a huge red flag.
And P&G was not alone. This became a trend called the Big Bath Write-Down. Colgate took a nearly $1 billion hit on its skin health business. Kenvue wrote down its Dr. Silabo brand by almost $500 million. A lot of the time, these write-downs are a quiet way of admitting that a past acquisition was a big mistake. a huge bet that just did not pay off.
But let's look at another clue, one that actually shows some serious strength. Check out the difference between a company's reported profit, or net income, and its operating cash flow. Just think of cash flow as its actual take-home pay. For both Colgate and Church & Dwight, their cash flow was way higher than their reported profit. This is a very, very strong signal of financial health. It means they are fantastic at turning paper profits into actual cash in the bank.
So, we've looked at the tough environment, we've seen how the newcomers did, we've talked about the impact on us as shoppers, and we've dug up clues in the financials. Now it is time to put it all together. For the final verdict, we turn to the proprietary analysis from our friends at HDIN Research.
So HDIN's analysis organizes these companies into a really clear hierarchy for 2025. At the bottom, in the needs improvement category, we find Kenvue. Stepping up from there is the growing challenger, Church & Dwight. Next, a global leader under pressure, which is Colgate. And that leaves us at the very top with the 2025 capital defense champions, Procter & Gamble and Unilever.
Okay, let's break down the why. Kenvue's financials were just mediocre, really weighed down by all the costs of the spinoff. Church & Dwight is a rising star, and it's being powered by hot brands like TheraBreath. Colgate is still a giant, of course, but it's being forced to play defense, so that leaves P&G and Unilever. And yes, they had some huge write-downs, but their fundamental ability to defend their capital against that 2025 economic storm was, according to HDN's analysis, completely unmatched. Through disciplined cost-cutting and just leveraging the raw pricing power of their core brands, they simply weathered the storm the best.
Honestly, we've only been able to scratch the surface here. The full proprietary analysis from HDIN Research goes into way more detail on every single one of these companies. If you want to take a deeper dive, you can find their complete report over at hdinresearch.com. And that leaves us with one final and I think fascinating question. 2025 was all about defense, absorbing punches, and protecting capital. But now as we look ahead, which of these titans is in the best position to stop playing defense and start playing offense? That, my friends, is the billion-dollar question for 2026. Thanks so much for watching.